Hello, BroDude. This is Brody, aka BroDude, and welcome back to another episode of BroDude Official. Where today, well, first of all, Happy New Decade, guys. It is a new decade, and I am starting off the decade strong with a new series. And we are going to be going through every Disney movie and ranking them. So, let's just get into the rules here so I can explain to you a little bit more. So yeah, here are the rules, and so I'll just run down real quick. I'll only be covering the Walt Disney Animation Studios movies, so there's no like Pixar, Studio Ghibli, or like 20th Century Fox animations, anything like that. None of the stuff that Disney owns, other than Walt Disney Animation Studios, all the major theatrical releases, which totals to 58 movies. In every video, I will be reviewing the oldest and newest movie, then the second oldest, second newest, third newest, etc. So this one is gonna be the first ever, and the most recent ever, and then we'll be slowly closing in basically. So then it'll be whatever the second movie was, and then whatever the second newest movie is, and we'll be going down from there, and that's how we're gonna do it. So in every review, I will give a best character, worst character, and best moment for each of the movies. And if I get to a sequel of a movie before the original, I'll review the original instead. And when I get to where the original would have been, I will review the sequel. And so basically, there are two movies that would be on this list that are not on Disney Plus, which is Make My Music and Frozen 2. I will review Frozen 2 just when it comes out on Disney Plus because we know that's coming. And we're just gonna pray for Make My Music. So if we get to that where that review would be, and it's on there at that point, then I'll just review it. And if we don't, I won't review it then. But if it's on there by the time that we're done with the whole thing, I will review it. And if it isn't, I will probably still end up reviewing it and just buy it on DVD. Because I'll be very unsatisfied if I do not finish the whole thing. But let's just get into the first movie, which is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So this movie was made in 1937 and is the first movie. So we're just going to go through the plot summary first. The queen's jealous of Snow White and sends a man to kill her. She escapes and lives with the seven dwarfs. The queen disguises herself and gives Snow White a poison apple. Snow White lays in her coffin until Prince Charming kisses her. She wakes up and lives happily ever after. So, this movie is interesting because it holds up surprisingly well for being made in the late 30s. And I gotta say, I was actually very surprised. With that being said, it's obviously not the best Disney movie of all time. So let's just go through some of my notes on this. So basically, there's two moments in this movie where, they're like reading out of a book, and that's how they tell the story. And in my personal opinion, I think that's just lazy storytelling. I'm not a fan when movies do that personally, although I know it doesn't bother some other people too much, so it's not too bad, but it's, in my opinion, a little bit lazy. With that being said, for the 1930s, it has solid animation. I mean, it wasn't like awful or anything, which surprised me, and it was pretty decent. Like, it wasn't amazing or anything. It was pretty expressionate as well, so pretty decent. I will have to say though, the music I was not a huge fan of, and a lot of it sounds the same, both the background music and the, like the songs in it, so, it was alright in that compartment. And you do have to respect it, though, for what it did, being the first Disney movie and all, and it was pretty solid for what it is. There were some parts of the movie where I thought there was a little bit too much singing, actually, which usually doesn't bother me, actually, at all, but in this case, there was a few moments where I was like, when are you going to get to some talking? It actually, near the end, it wasn't too much of a problem. A lot of the problems were fixed near the end, actually. A lot of my problems were in the beginning. And it sort of at first had a weird, like, unsettling nature to it, sort of an uncanny valley thing. And not because of how it looked, just the whole thing of it. But I think you get used to it after a while, so I don't think it ended up being too bad. And we didn't really see much of the villain for like a solid chunk of the movie. So that was a little bit odd, not gonna lie. Also, there actually is some good sound design in this movie. Like, there's a lot of, the sound effects. I think they worked pretty well in this one. It actually worked to great effect in this movie. I think that there's like two like short trippy sequences. I thought those were great, and those were sort of they weren't like super long or anything, and they weren't super trippy, but they were cool. I liked them, and they really are a predecessor for things to come, like in Dumbo and practically all of Fantasia. So it really did set up some stuff for later on. So I will say though that in general, the characters aren't amazing. I mean, there are a few ones that are pretty alright, but in general, it's I don't know. It's the 30s. You can't say that's terrible, but it wasn't great either. Obviously, you aren't going to get as much in-depth characters as some of the later stuff, but I would have expected a little bit better considering Pinocchio's coming up next, and Pinocchio's a pretty good character. As well as some other ones in that one, like Jiminy Cricket. But we will get to that. And Prince Charming in the movie is dumb. I don't like it. Because he is, like, barely mentioned right at the beginning. And then he comes back all at the end. He's like, ooh, look at me. I'm Prince Charming. I'm a main character of the movie. Like, no, you're not. He literally had, like, 1 minute of screen time. It was so dumb. I will just say, the Seven Dwarfs were pretty enjoyable. I'm not a huge fan of the people that are straight up for slapstick comedy or just, the comedic character. But I think they actually worked pretty well, and they actually had a bit of more of a purpose in this movie, so I could appreciate that. So I thought they were pretty decent. Not amazing, but they're a good highlight of the movie. And also, out of nowhere, the queen dies, and it's like, oh, I didn't even know that happened. Like, I was like, oh, that's... Like, I didn't even know that. Of course, the iconic poison apple thing, that was great. But yeah, I really thought it picked up near the end there. At the beginning, it kind of had moments where I kind of got a little bit bored, but I thought it picked up a bit near the end. That being said, let's get into the best and worst characters. We'll start with the worst character because it's pretty obvious, and that's Prince Charming. I mean, it's pretty clear to me. I mean, Prince Charming, throughout the whole movie, he barely did anything. He was right at the beginning. He said like a word or two to her, and then was not in the whole movie right until the end. He kissed her, and then boom, he main character. I thought that was very dumb. That was one of my major complaints with this movie. And the best character, I will have to say, goes to Grumpy. Now, I have to say there's actually two other ones in contention here, which was Snow White and the Queen. But with that being said, they're both pretty bland in terms of being the basic villain, the basic, good guy, or good girl, I guess. So I didn't want to put them because Grumpy was interesting because first of all, he was sort of, the whole movie was just like, yippity yappity, I'm so happy, and I wasn't a huge fan of, like, the constant weirdness of it all. It just, like, didn't feel right, but I feel like Grumpy sort of balanced it out well enough to save the movie a little bit. So, yeah. I will also say that I liked his transformation, going from a really grumpy guy to, at the end, then, being cool with Snow White. And I thought that was a cool transformation. I thought that was a good character arc, actually. And I think there's a few actually good moments in this one. Of course, the poison apple whole situation. But, also the queen dying was crazy. Snow White, actually, this is my favorite scene, actually. Snow White just, like, laying in her grave and, like, everybody just mourning her. And it was like actually emotional, and the sea of just like waves of happiness and stuff. It was an actual emotional scene, and I was pretty impressed. So yeah, that's Snow and Seven Dwarfs. Oh, I can't speak. Overall, a good movie. I would not put it near the top of my list by any means. It's not like one of the best movies of all time. That being said, you have to respect it for what it did, and it actually did entertain me throughout. So, um, I am impressed. I'm not gonna lie. So we're going to move on here to Wreck-It Ralph. Now, most of the rules are actually going to be coming into play here, considering, the whole Frozen 2 isn't going to be here yet, so even though that would have been the next one. Also, the whole sequel thing, where you'll do the original first. So yeah, most of the rules are coming into play here. This is one of the only ones where the whole sequel thing will come into play, really, because there aren't too many sequels, and most of them we will get to the first one before, anyways. Anyways, let's get into the actual movie here. Wreck-It Ralph. We'll go to the plot summary first. Ralph is tired of spending 30 years as the hated bad guy, so he goes to prove his worth by winning a medal in a first-person shooter. He somehow makes his way into a kart racer game, and infecting it with bugs from the first-person shooter. He meets Vanellope, a glitch in the game. He helps her race, and then it is revealed that King Candy was another character from another ended game, and that he was the one that was making Vanellope a glitch. He and the bugs then take over, and everyone escapes except Vanellope, who can't escape because she is a glitch. So Ralph sacrifices his life to save Vanellope, but Vanellope saves him. They live, her game is fixed, and she becomes the runner of the game. Ralph is still the bad guy, but is now loved by all, and people are able to separate reality from the game. So, yeah, we're gonna get into this here. So, Wreck-It Ralph. Ralph himself is one of the most likable characters in all of Disney history. I know that is shocking to say, because it's such a recent movie compared to the other ones. But I truly believe that Ralph is one of the most likable dudes, at least in Wreck-It Ralph itself, not the second one we will get to later. But in the first one, he's one of the most likable characters in all of Disney history. Let's just move on here. I love the video game references in this. I mean, I am a huge video game fan, as you guys should know, and it was awesome. There was just a lot of cool moments, a lot of cool references and stuff like that. With that being said, you do not have to be a gaming fan to enjoy this movie. I don't think most of my enjoyment came out of the video game references or anything. It came out of the characters and the story and the comedy. It was quite a funny movie, I have to say. So first of all, other than Ralph, all of the characters I think are likable and have understanding conflicts. Let's talk about the characters themselves. Ralph, Felix, Vanellope, and the shooter lady. I don't remember her name right now. Oh, well, dang. They are all very likable characters. And all of the side characters are very likable as well. King Candy, well, he's the villain, obviously, so we will get to him. Cubert, any of the other side characters, the Tapper guy, all great. I love all the characters in this. And all of the characters have an understandable conflict. Like, Ralph just doesn't want to be the bad guy anymore, and you get that. Felix is mad at Ralph because he went turbo, and it's understandable. Vanellope just wants to, not be a glitch and wants to be in the game. Also understandable. And, that one shooter lady that I can't remember the name of right now just wants to... Well, her husband died at their wedding, so she's just sad. She's just sad. And she has an understandable conflict there. And I think that is the strong suit of this. With that being said, there's a lot of other things that are also great about this. The animation is great in this movie. I love the attention to detail because depending on what the character is from what game they are and such, they move differently. And I think that is super awesome attention to detail to make not every character feel like the same, but also to not like make them the same, but also differentiate them enough or make them similar enough to fit together. I think that was a hard line to walk, but I think they did it very successfully, and I was very impressed with how they did it. With that being said, there's still a lot of other great things about this. I love all of the settings in this because there's multiple settings. There's a whole big area thing with like that's in the cord or whatever. There's Ralph's game. They go through Pac-Man. There's of course, the Sugar Rush. There's a lot of great settings in this movie, and I do appreciate that. So I think also another strong suit of this is some of the like emotional moments, like when Ralph breaks Vanellope's car. You're like, oh, like you get it because he's trying to save her, but also you know that he's in the wrong, but he doesn't. Like it doesn't make him an unlikable character because he has a solid motivation for it, and that's why that you can totally understand it, but you also can feel for Vanellope as well. I mean, this movie is just great. I think when they cut to Felix and that other girl, they're very entertaining together. They're very fun. So let's talk about the climax now. The climax was awesome. I mean, the bug's infected, and then everyone's trying to escape, and then Vanellope can't escape, and then Ralph sacrifices himself, like, for Vanellope. Then Vanellope, saves him. And it's just like a bunch of stuff in a row that are all so awesome, and I really enjoyed that part of the movie. And that's my favorite part, when Ralph sacrifices himself for Vanellope. I think that was awesome. That was great. But let's get into my one minor complaint about this movie, and that is King Candy / Turbo. Now, what you may be thinking, he was an enjoyable character, right? And yeah, he was an enjoyable character, and I actually did enjoy him in the movie. And I like the twist of him being Turbo. I think that was cool. But the whole thing of this movie is that, like, Ralph is not a bad guy just because he's a bad guy. And it's not like a black and white world, It's like not like bad guy, good guy, It's not that blatant. So when they had a villain in King Candy, I think it was a problem because they didn't even necessarily need King Candy as a villain. They could have made him a good guy still, without, not necessarily somebody that's likable, but not somebody that's a villain. Maybe just an antagonist, sure, but I don't think he should have been a straight up villain. And that's my one issue with this, and that's why he is my least favorite character. Although it's a minor complaint, because it's also understandable, and he's an enjoyable character throughout the movie, so it is a minor complaint still, but it does hamper with a little bit, and it's my one complaint about the movie, and that's it. With that being said, an absolutely incredible movie. I'd say very underrated movie. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, but it is super awesome. So we're gonna wrap up here, guys, with the current wow, I can't speak. The current rankings, and that is pretty easy for me. This might be a shocker because one of them is a classic, and that is number 2, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Yeah, I enjoyed this movie, guys. Do not get me wrong here. I thought it was actually a pretty enjoyable movie, but it doesn't hold up as well today. Obviously, it's a classic, and it's not like a classic that you're like you have to respect it because it's a classic. No, it actually was enjoyable, but it's not like amazing. It's more like a 6 out of 10 movie. Like, you enjoyed it more than you disliked it, but it's not like something that you really want to rewatch. Wreck-It Ralph is number 1 right now, because I would rewatch this right now. I just watched it a couple of days ago. I would totally rewatch this right now, enjoy it just as much as I did last time. Wreck-It Ralph is awesome, and it has a lot of positives to it. It has all of the likable characters, all the understandable motives and conflicts of the movie, the climax, the side characters. I mean, the comedy, I didn't even mention that much, but it's great. I mean, I love all the multiple settings. I mean, I love everything about this movie. I love the concept of the movie. I love the whole video game, references and stuff of the movie. I love the animation of the movie. I love just about everything about this movie. And that is why it is my current #1 movie. Well, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. There will be more to come, for sure. Of course, I'm going through all of Disney movies. So, yeah, if you did enjoy this video, leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. BroDude out.